itchy beat. Well, I know I'm late. I apologize. But welcome once again to the reading of ABAJAM Chronicles, books 1 and 2. And of course, this is book 1 we're reading from, chapter 13. And this week will be a little bit different of a format. First of all, my fiance laughed at me. I discovered something on the computer when I was doing some editing. As you well know, I was doing the edits on my new book. And by the way, here you go. This is what the cover will probably look like. Can you see that okay? That's just a rough draft of the cover. I have the artist working on it. Anyways, I discovered something fascinating that I didn't know all these years. But again, I am a bit of a Luddite when it comes to computers. So today I'm going to take the easy way out. I'm going to be lazy. I've got a nice cold drink here. Rye and Coke in my favorite cup, because I am a member of Blaze TV and Louder with Crowder. I also have here, oh boy, a Dutch croquette I bought at the Highland store, and some leftover chicken. And while I'm eating all of this and drinking that, I'm going to be reading to you, kinda, sorta. So first of all, let's get started on the reading. Here, let me pause this for a second. Welcome back. Anyways, I had to set it up, a nice picture of myself. Looks like I'm reading the book while I'm eating. And the reading will be done by computer. Amazing. So here we go. So enjoy. I think I will, because I've already tried it once, and it's great.
Again, to bring all of you up to speed from last week's reading, this is the last paragraph from chapter 12. Bill's despondency over Sean sort of put a damper on the whole tour. I thought I'd offer him a distraction from his personal melancholy and told him to stay put. I was going to retrieve some items that I had brought along from his car and show him something that was so spectacular, it was truly out of this world. Chapter 13. Helleth no fury like a woman, who's Scottish.
Jackie had to shout 3 times for us to come to dinner before having to send one of the boys to fetch us. Bill and I, followed by Jason, returned to the house without delay and marched straight into the kitchen. He was in a much more jovial mood now. Twice at the dinner table he had to suppress breaking out into laughter.
Even though Jackie had worked all day, she still found the resolve to dutifully prepare a sumptuous dinner for all her boys and their friends. I actually felt a little embarrassed at Jackie having to perform these additional duties when, had I known, I would have picked up pizza or takeout before arriving. But she had been insistent. Our feast consisted of breaded pork chops with roasted potatoes and cooked fresh endive, harvested from their garden out back. There were halved cobs of fresh sweet corn, also from the garden. Each plate was garnished with a thick juicy slice of fresh plump tomato and several slices of cucumbers. Even the bread was freshly baked bread, but it came from a bakery she passed in town on her way home. For dessert she produced a marvelous apple crumble pie, also purchased at the same bakery. The boys and I all drank coffee to wash down the pie while she enjoyed a tea. Bill was the only one allowed to have a beer because I would be driving later. It was Bill, who shortly after dinner, had to remind me to produce for Jackie those special items that I had previously shown to him in the garage. Even more peculiar than me having to be reminded was that Jason and Stevie had almost completely forgotten about our little surprise and were now busily engaged in other activities. Only after Bill prompted me to send one of the boys to retrieve the package from the garage and set it before us on the still cluttered dinner table, did the full impact of Monday's profound events come back to clear and full recollection. To be honest, it was as if the 3 of us, Jason, Stevie and I, had become disinterested in our very significant prize. I shrugged off the strange feeling of ambivalence as I reached for the package and carefully reopened it, revealing the 2 modules. I placed both of them on the table before Bill and Jackie and began to recount, once more, but this time for Jackie's benefit, the events of that fateful Monday night. I only let the boys interrupt me whenever I felt they should add their own personal perspective or insight to the story. Ryan by this time had gone off to the living room to play and watch television, which to him was infinitely more entertaining. The five of us remained seated, gathered around the dining room table with the two modules conspicuously placed in middle of the dirty dishes and cutlery. Had there been four of them, there would have been little space available for any dishes. As my story progressed, Jackie, who was sitting next to Bill, moved closer to him holding his hand and arm ever more firmly. She actually seemed frightened of the modules. She even went so far as to slowly inch her chair away from the table and the modules. Both her and Bill's eyes were transfixed on the alien objects and would only look away when one of the boys would excitedly pipe up and add their rendition of what they had seen and experienced that night. When Stevie spoke up, a grave look of concern swept over Jackie's usually imperturbable pale freckled face. I suspected her concerned look indicated she feared he may have been exposed to some alien or space contamination. Now Bill on the other hand was a down-to-earth, hands-on kind of guy. Judging by the expression of indifference on his face, I could only deduce he was having a difficult time fathoming the whole aliens from space story. I hadn't had the opportunity to explain it to him in such detail while we were in the garage, only the gist of the story. I now suspect that at the time he must have misinterpreted my feeble attempt as a practical joke to cheer him up. Finally, after about 20 minutes, Stevie, Jason and I completed telling the whole story in as accurate detail as possible. For several minutes there was no response from either Bill or Jackie. They both just sat there dumbfounded. With an outrageous roaring guffaw of laughter, Bill slapped me on the shoulder. He bellowed out, "You crazy bastard, you really are a Jackie fall for that story." Me too, almost. Even the boys, they was believable. He continued laughing for a good while. Turning to the boys he asked grinning, "What are these silly things anyway?" Even Ryan came running back into the kitchen to see what had set his father off so hilariously. "Come."
You just can't get a computer to say the word bastard correctly. What are you going to do? And I noticed a spelling mistake. Desert. Yeah, they weren't eating desert, they were eating dessert. I'll have to correct that.
"Tell Jackie and me where you get these funny-looking toilet seat lids." "Jackie, can you believe these tree guys?" Bill asked her between laughs. Jackie just sat there staring at us and the modules and looking not at all amused. Her breathing was becoming more rapid and shallow. She turned sidelong and gave Bill an incredulous look. Then, to Bill's chagrin, and my amazement, Jackie replied, "Yes, I actually do believe their story. I know my son, and I know Jason almost as well enough to know they could never carry out telling such an elaborate lie. They could never fabricate such an outlandish fairy tale. Not on this scale or with such detail. Since Stevie could talk, he was always a lousy liar. And Jason is no better at lying than Stevie. I couldn't see anything in their eyes or their conversation that betrayed them that this was a joke or a big hoax. No, Bill, I'm really afraid what they just told us now, it must have really happened." "Well, I still do not believe it," remarked Bill emphatically, while reaching over to pick up one of the modules. Almost in a panic, Jackie cried out, "Don't touch those damn things," while at the same time restraining his arm. There could be all kinds of unknown and dangerous contaminants or radiation coming from those things. There was real apprehension in her voice and concern in her eyes. She then turned an accusing glare at me with those same eyes and asked, "What in God's name were you thinking, Earl? You've exposed Stevie and your son and now all of us to something you know nothing about." Fearing for Ryan's health, she ordered Ryan to go back to the living room and watch TV. She was almost hysterical. It took all of Bill's easygoing nature and gentle persuading to calm her down. He tried to reassure her jokingly, commenting that if there was anything dangerous we would by now all have pointy ears. He patted her hand and smiled as he made that remark. Jackie withdrew her hand and angrily scorned him. "I fail to see the humor right now," and then added, "And don't be so bloody patronizing to me, Bill." The actual notion of contracting a deadly contaminant hadn't really occurred to me. Now I was secretly hoping Bill was right. I had received the most exposure, so, other than any delayed reaction, if any symptoms were to occur, you'd think I might have manifested something by now. Maybe. But Jackie was also right. It now seemed incredibly stupid of me to expose the boys, myself and then all them so carelessly. Let's be fair, I had to argue, in a lame attempt at defending my stupidity. Right from the get-go, the boys and I thought a plane was crashing. At the time I had only good intentions in mind. I was genuinely attempting a rescue for any possible crash survivors. How was I supposed to know it was a UFO? Yet.
Oh, let's go back one word.
Let's be fair, I had to argue, in a lame attempt at defending my stupidity. Right from the get-go, the boys and I thought a plane was crashing. At the time I had only good intentions in mind. I was genuinely attempting a rescue for any possible crash survivors. How was I supposed to know it was a UFO?
You know, computers, they just have no emotions. I mean, the inflection, yeah, what are you going to do?
Yes, no doubt you and the boys had good intentions, agreed Jackie. But we all know the saying about the world being full of good intentions. Jackie then angrily added, I'll allow you that excuse the first night, but how do you account for these next 3 days? Look, you and the boys almost forgot you'd even brought these, what do you call them, modules here with you. Has it occurred to you, she challenged, stammering, these things may have affected your memories somehow. At that moment, Jackie looked as though she was about to break down and cry. I began to recall all the events of that night and the following 3 days. I mustered all my mental faculties in an attempt to gain some cohesion and focus. At least that's what I attempted to do. But in that same instant, all my thoughts became muddled and discordant. I just couldn't seem to put my finger on it. It's as if I was losing control all over again. That it was no longer I doing the talking or arguing. Almost uncontrollably, I blurted out, okay, I stand accused. So what I did was, I guess by all accounts, especially yours, directing that sarcasm at Jackie, something really stupid, irresponsible and dangerous. Hey, I'm just a stupid truck driver, remember? Your job doesn't make you stupid, Al. Your actions do.
Al.
It was reckless on your part, she added most emphatically. Plain and simple as that. Look, this is my only excuse and my only defense, I pleaded. At the time, in all the excitement of the crash and then the realization that this was an alien spacecraft, any vestiges of common sense or rationale I may have had under normal circumstances were temporarily suspended. So okay, I'm truly sorry. I risked my own life and I sincerely thought I was setting a good example for the boys. Doesn't that count for anything?
It should.
Besides, I would never deliberately endanger the boys' lives.
Never.
My apology was just a little disingenuous considering how I said it, which betrayed me. It didn't help my cause any when I defiantly exclaimed, so that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
What an ass.
I couldn't really debate with Jackie on the issue of contamination because deep down I realized she was probably right. But part of my mind refused to accept her reasoning. The part of my brain that I seemed to be in control of, at least sometimes, had this nagging thought. Perhaps these objects weren't all that benign. Had Jason, Steve and I actually been infected by some sinister contagion or weird mind-altering radiation? Again, as quickly as that thought entered my mind it seemed to evaporate. Both boys were quick to come to my rescue with all sorts of good reasons why we had almost forgotten about the modules. First it was Steve. It's just as much my fault, Mom. I was excited to get back home and show Jason around. We haven't seen each other for quite a while. Jason interrupted, speaking up next. Nothing really bad happened out there, Mrs. Vanier. I don't feel sick or anything. I'm really sure me and Stevie and my dad, we're all okay. Jackie cut him off before he could continue. With renewed conviction she answered, I don't feel or share your same confidence, Jason. Besides, what do you mean, nothing bad happened? What do you call the spaceship exploding? besides the fact that it almost crashed into you. And then you don't go and tell anybody, besides us, and keep it a secret like only you, my son, and your dad should exclusively be the only people who know about this event. Come on, Jackie, I intervened. Go easy on the boys, it's not their fault. They didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't about to let the two boys come to my defense when they were in all actuality innocent bystanders. Nor would I allow them to take the rap. I was the adult and I'm wholly responsible for whatever actions or inaction was taken. Before I could continue, both Steve and Jason, in unison, began blurting out all manner of excuses and justifications for mine and their actions. Their exuberance and eloquence flabbergasted Jackie and Bill, as well as me. Okay, calm down guys, I loudly interrupted. Turning to Stevie and Jason I said, I think your parents get the message, Steve. I continued my defense, look Jackie, Bill. Before that thing hit the water, it was completely engulfed in flames. Any space contamination would have burned up. I'm almost certain of it. As far as being exposed to any dangerous alien bacteria or substances go, I'd stake my life, which I guess I've done, on the probability we're all just going to be fine. I personally believe there's every real possibility these aliens would have taken the same necessary procedures in sterilization and other safety precautions that NASA takes. I took a quick breath, continuing before Jackie had time to form her rebuttal. If they are so much more advanced than us and visit Earth regularly, which I'm assuming they probably do, they'd know how to take every precaution not to carry anything harmful to mankind or any other species here on Earth, or elsewhere for that matter. Jackie curtly interrupted me by declaring, that's assuming these aliens were good and benevolent and not coming here to attack us. I think you assume far too much for someone who knows so little about these aliens. Where have I heard that before, I thought to myself. I mean, how can you positively say they are not here to conquer us, now that we all know they exist, thanks to what happened to you? She bit her lip while pressing her right forefinger against it in a worried gesture. She was troubled and deep in thought at her own suggestion. Well, if they were malevolent aggressors, it wouldn't matter much what disease they carried now, would it? I disputed. Besides, that whole Prime Directive thing on the TV show Star Trek, I remind you it is strictly a sci-fi man-made concept. There is no Prime Directive as of yet. Also, we don't travel to other countries anymore without first taking vaccines and other preventative medical precautions. We try not to carry unfamiliar diseases to foreign countries, unlike the explorers of the 15th and 16th centuries. So quite frankly, I don't especially feel concerned about my own, or even Jason's health. Which deep down, was a lie. I then quickly interjected, and besides, if they were a scout ship, they are not giving up any information about Earth anytime soon. You can pretty well say they are dead in the water. It may have been an inopportune time for a bad joke, but the boys found it hilarious and I'd hoped to ease the tension. Even though my arguments and reasoning sounded good to me, I too wasn't all that convinced anymore of their intentions. Even I was becoming a little more than skeptical of these aliens' intentions, but I sure as hell wasn't about to reveal that to Jackie. Once more I began to think to myself, could it be possible I'm more susceptible to some form of subliminal alien influence? Am I more receptive to whatever transmissions may be emanating from these modules? Could there perhaps be other aliens around? It wasn't long before my thoughts began to drift off disconcertingly in every direction. My growing sense of unease was abruptly interrupted by Jackie bringing me back to reality once again. But you still shouldn't have exposed Stevie or the rest of us when you cannot say 100% for certain there's no real danger, she insisted. She was showing real signs of agitation, even frustration, as this debate seemed to be going nowhere. I even began to suspect there was a genuine hint of hostility in the pitch of her voice. I was beginning to realize all my excuses and arguments for justifying my actions were no longer moot. Not when pitted against a mother's genuine maternal concern for her family, especially her children's well-being. Bill stepped in to support his wife and added the question, so how are we to know for sure if all three of you guys are all right? Tabernacle. And what in God's name are we going to do with des funny toilet seat lids? Even easygoing Bill was getting irritated and a little edgy. This is when his French accent usually became most pronounced. Jackie shot Bill a stern disapproving look. He had used a curse in front of the boys. He rolled his eyes and quickly apologized to everyone.
Tabernacle.
I knew Bill and his background, and his apology was as disingenuous as my previous apology. Regardless, he again reiterated his question. This time though, without the expletive. Jackie brusquely pushed her seat away from the table, stood up and testily announced, I have to put Ryan to bed. I know what to do as far as getting Stevie checked out. Al will have to take care of himself and Jason. You had all better find a solution about what to do with these things, as she pointed a contemptuous finger at the modules. When I come back to clean off the table there had better be only dishes on the table. Her ultimatum was absolute. She excused herself and proceeded to the living room to prepare Ryan for bed. The Scottish was coming out of her and it was making all of us, especially me, very uncomfortable. It had gotten dark, as well as late. Yet it would get much later before this whole matter was finally settled or resolved to at least meet everyone's mutual satisfaction. And there were 5 of us to be satisfied. While she was gone, Bill reached over the table and drew the 2 modules closer to him. He then cautiously waved his hand over them as someone would do over an electric stove element to determine if it were hot. No heat and no strange expression seemed to come from these 2 things. What you and the boys call modules, he casually commented and shrugged his large shoulders. Curious, he picked both of them up for a closer inspection. Holding them gingerly in each hand he pretended to be a human scale as if to gauge if either of them were of different weight. He then brought the one in his left hand closer to his face for greater scrutiny. They are very light and feel like they are made from soft plastic or something, kinda sticky, he remarked, but it sounded more like a question. He then added, probably nothing mechanical and nothing electrical that I can see. The surface, it color are quite pretty and shiny. But I would not call it exactly to see true. Transparent, I offered. Oh, yes, not transparent but perhaps translucent. Maybe opacus, that is Latin word for Bill was stumbling for words he didn't use regularly. Opaque, I offered again, is the English translation. How do you know the Latin? Oh, yes, opaque is the word, he agreed. The Latin come from my brother. He tell me my soul is not so black, just opacus, which made him laugh riotously out loud again. Seeing Bill laugh and dropping his guard, I quickly added, yeah, that stickiness you feel is probably leftover residue from the slick that formed around the spaceship after it crashed. Trying to dispel any concern or reservations he might have in regards to further contamination, I matter-of-factly added, I even swallowed a mouthful of that shit when I was swimming away from the spaceship before it blew up. To back up my earlier argument, I reminded Bill, see, I'm still not sick in the least bit. Bill nodded and acknowledged I still seemed fine to him. He put one of the modules back into the box so he could better handle the one he still held. What do you suppose the center olay is for? He curiously asked. The back is kinda rough. These 3 little rubber things, like little tits, he joked. You say this how they were connected and got their power? I think so too. Put that goddamn thing down, came the most hysterically shrill, punctuated, rebuking directive I have ever heard from Jackie, who was now standing in the faintly lit hallway at the kitchen's entrance. At the time, Bill, still seated at the table, was holding the one module up to the dining table's light. He almost dropped it from the shock, not so much from her shouting but of her resorting to swearing, taking God's name in vain. And doing so in front of guests. I had been in the process of retelling and reenacting the events inside the spaceship, particularly the part dealing with the aliens' tentacles and the modules, when Jackie came back to the kitchen. Seeing Bill nonchalantly handling a module caused her to suffer a momentary lapse of piety as well as completely losing self-control. Jackie was the most religious person in the house. She never condoned any coarse or abusive language in her presence and would never abide outright swearing. Now in her grave distress for her family's safety, her gloves were off. That was the Scottish in her. It made her more volatile and reactive, especially if she perceived a threat to her family. In a fight, you'd want her on your side. But right at this moment, she wasn't on my side. I was the perceived threat. Bill promptly returned the module back to the box along with the other one. With a sheepish expression on his face, he tried to reassure Jackie that no harm had been done. He suggested his experience working with machines and electricity gave him some special knowledge or understanding in these matters. Also, that's what he thought. Right now I don't care what you think, she hotly exclaimed, pointing an accusing finger at me. Then Bill. Good God, are both of you so stupid as to think everything is all right because you can't see or feel anything out of the ordinary at this moment? Well, neither did Marie Curie when she was working with radium. The radiation she helped discover eventually killed her. And might I add, she didn't die overnight. She directed her next question, which was as much a comment, at her husband. I'm certain you don't have a Geiger counter or even a meter that measures radon gas in the garage. You can't even afford a diagnostic machine for checking out the cars you work on. It wasn't too difficult for any of us to hear the biting sarcasm in her diatribe. For Bill the sarcasm cut much deeper. He knew that without a proper diagnostic machine, his garage would never have that category of genuine respectability and public endorsement. His garage was just another off-the-highway, second-rate, fix-it shop. I think we should call the authorities like the RCMP or someone and turn these things over for examination. Especially before someone really gets hurt or something, she exclaimed. By now the rest of us weren't exactly sure whether she had meant hurt from any kind of contamination or exposure to radiation, or that something inference meant she'd physically clobber us. This time though, without any coaxing, even Bill added his voice to mine and the boys in protest. I think Jackie was completely caught off guard by our unified resounding no way. I suspect she was also perplexed at how quickly Bill vacillated and gave his support to us. But Jackie was not to be deterred. Well then, I'd like to know what the four of you propose to do with those things and the very real possibility of contamination. You sure as hell aren't going to sleep in the same bed as me tonight, Bill, she intoned. And nobody touches Ryan. I'm going to limit his exposure to all of you until I get him and Stevie and me checked out at the hospital by Peter and Donna. I had to interrupt Jackie's planning. If I let her continue to dominate this situation, she'd be turning over the modules to people I don't approve of. To throw her off track, I wholeheartedly agreed with her suggestion that she get the boys and herself checked out. That's right, I forgot, your brother-in-law is a pediatrician, knowing full well he was. What better opportunity than to have him check you all out? This way we can keep our little secret in the family for the time being. She smirked at that suggestion suspiciously, then firmly recommended Jason and I do likewise. Again I heartily agreed with her, all the while hoping to assuage her fears and hopefully undermine her intentions. As soon as Jason and I get home, I confirmed. And if it'll make you feel more comfortable, I'll keep possession of the modules for the time being, as it was I who found them. She immediately corrected me by exclaiming, you mean stole them out of that, whatever it was. A spaceship. And I consider it salvaging. Possession is 9/10 of the law. Besides, this is the only remaining proof of what the boys and I witnessed. And should we be so unlucky as to be contaminated as you fear, then having these items may provide the necessary samples and clues needed to cure us. No doubt you'll let me know about Steve's test results. She readily acknowledged she would. In that case, I'll remove these modules from your presence immediately, I assured her, and folded over the flaps, securing the box we brought them in. I could even drop off these modules with the science department at the university in town. I didn't actually know if there was a science department at the university, and quite frankly I didn't care. Steve looked very disappointed, but Jackie looked relieved. I don't think she cared to whom or even if I actually turned them over, just as long as I got them out of her house and away from the family. My thinking was out of sight, out of mind, which is how I kinda felt at the moment. When I returned to the house after depositing the box onto the back seat in Bill's car, I was immediately struck by the weird impression that everything had returned to normal, if this were an altered universe. Jason and Steve were doing the dishes. Only now they both looked like they were in their mid-20s. I really must be going out of my mind.
And that ends today's reading of chapter 13. Okay, let's see where we are here. Okay, let's chapter 16, chapter 15. Okay, chapter 14. Coming to my senses. So that's it for this week. I really hope you enjoyed the book reading by the computer. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so aside from being busy with the pool and going to the Georgetown Fair, working the edits on my book, and public service announcement. This last few days I've been working on or compiling a first and last chapter from my first book and the first 2.5 chapters from my second book, with including pictures and the cover that I had shown you. Has a what do you call that again? A sampler of my next book to farm out to a dozen people or so to see if they what they think of my book. Now, I got that idea from David Chilton. As a matter of fact, he's offering a mentoring course with through Friesen Press, 17-hour seminar on video, and it'll cost about $265 or $85. And I was going to buy it, but I wrote him a letter this morning, and he phoned me back shortly thereafter, and because I know him, and he recommended I don't buy it because it's only meant for non-fiction, and as my book is fiction, science, autobiographical fiction, it wouldn't be suitable or applicable. So aside from that, here, let me start this music so we can segue out of here. Put my phone away because it's time for me to do other things. I hope you've enjoyed this video. All of you have a great week, and let's bring this up a little bit so you can see me as I leave. Grab my dishes. Oh, by the way, you should watch Louder with Crowder. Funny show. Okay, napkins. And we'll see you all next week. Have a great week and a safe one. Damn, I can't get out this door. Come on.